Hello, today we're going to go over the 30, 60, 90 triangles. So basically the relationship is that when you have a 30, 60, 90 triangle, you'll notice that the side, the hypotenuse is always across from the 90-degree angle. And also the short leg, the shortest leg is across from the smallest angle. So 30 is the smallest angle and we have the short leg right here. And then across from 60 degrees, we have the longer leg. So we have a short leg, a long leg, and a hypotenuse. And they're always in that location. So the relationship is that the easiest one that I think is the easiest one is the short leg and the hypotenuse. Okay, so the short leg and the hypotenuse are related in that the hypotenuse is twice as big as the short leg. So I can write it down as that hypotenuse is double the short leg. Or you can do it backwards, right? You can say, hey, the short leg is half as big as the hypotenuse. So the short leg is half of the hypotenuse. So that's the relationship between the short leg and the hypotenuse. The other relationship that's going to help you solve these problems is that the long leg is the same as the short leg, but with a square root of 3 attached. Okay? So the long leg is equal to the short leg times the square root of 3. You could also do it backwards and say that the short leg is the same as the long leg, taking away that square root of 3. So divided by square root of 3. So I wrote it down in words because this is going to help us figure out how to solve for missing sides of triangles. So let's do example 1 where it says find each missing side. So part A, basically the problem is what I wrote in blue, and then in green is the solution. Okay, so in blue is what you can get on an assignment or on homework. In green is the work that you do to solve it. So let's start with letter A. It's a 30, 60, 90, so we can use the pattern that we just learned. They gave us 5, which is the short leg. So it's a good idea to write it down. The short leg is 5. And then we need to find the long leg, and we need to find the hypotenuse. Those are the missing sides. Okay, so the way I got the long leg is by using the relationship between the short leg and the long leg. So remember that the long leg is the short leg times square root of 3. So this long leg is the same as this short leg times the square root of 3. So the long leg is 5 times the square root of 3. That's how I got that one. And then the hypotenuse, if you look over here, the hypotenuse is double the short leg. So if the short leg is 5, the hypotenuse is double of that, so it's 10. So that's how you can get your answers using the relationships. Letter B, again, it's a 30, 60, 90 triangle. They give us the hypotenuse and they give us the long leg. Sorry, they give us the hypotenuse only, and we need to find the long leg and the short leg. So the easy one to find is that this short leg is half of the hypotenuse. So x has to be half of 5. Therefore, it's 2.5, or you can write it as a fraction as 5 divided by 2. After we find the short leg, you can find the long leg really easily because remember that the long leg is the short leg times the square root of 3. So if the short leg is 2.5, we're going to multiply that times the square root of 3 to get the long leg. So the long leg is 2.5 times the square root of 3. Or if you chose to use 5 over 2, you can write it as 5 over 2 times the square root of 3. These two are equivalent. I prefer the fractions because it's more exact. But yeah, so that's letter B. Let's look at letter C. They give us the hypotenuse, and we need to find the short leg and the long leg. So the hypotenuse is 2. The short leg has to be half as big, right? The short leg is half of the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is 2, the short leg is 1, and then the long leg has to be the short leg times square root of 3. So after you do a few of these, you're going to be able to do this really quickly. So the long leg is 1 times the square root of 3. And there you go. Letter D, 30, 60, 90 triangle. They give us the long leg this time, and we need to find the hypotenuse and the short leg. So if the long leg is 4 square root of 3, we're trying to figure out the short leg. So let's see. The long leg is short leg times square root of 3. The short leg is the long leg divided by square root of 3. Divided by the square root of 3. So this short leg, y, what we're trying to find, is equal to the long leg divided by square root of 3. So you can write down that y is equal to the long leg divided by square root of 3. And the square root of 3's cancel out. So that's how you get y equals 4. And then you know the hypotenuse is double the short leg. So if y is 4, then x is 8. It's just double. Letter E, okay? You want to find the hypotenuse and the short leg, and you know the long leg is 5. Here we're going to have to do a little work. We know that the short leg and the long leg are related. The short leg is the long leg divided by square root of 3. So x has to equal the long leg, 5, divided by the square root of 3. Okay, the short leg equals the long leg divided by square root of 3. Whenever you have a square root in the denominator, we need to rationalize. In other words, multiply by the square root of the denominator. So the square root of 3, we're going to multiply square root of 3 over square root of 3. 5 times square root of 3 is 5 root 3. Square root of 3 times square root of 3 is square root of 9. Square root of 9 is 3. So x, the short leg, is 5 square root of 3 over 3. And then now that we have the short leg, we can find the hypotenuse because the hypotenuse is twice as big as the short leg. So the hypotenuse, y, is twice as big as x, and it's going to be twice as big as 5 root 3 over 3 because x was 5 root 3 over 3. 2 times 5 is 10 root 3 over 3. That's your simplified form. Letter F. Okay, so we want to find x and y. Let's find x first. X is the short leg, and they give us the long leg. So remember, the short leg is equal to the long leg divided by the root 3. I'm just using the same patterns over here. The short leg is the long leg divided by root 3. So x is going to equal the long leg, which is 7, divided by the square root of 3. And whenever we have a square root in the denominator, we have to multiply by that square root. I'm going to multiply by root 3 over 3, and you're going to get 7 root 3 over, and I just wrote 3 because I know that square root of 3 times square root of 3 is square root of 9, and that reduces to 3. Anytime you multiply a radical by itself, the radical goes away. And now, after we found x, we found the short side, we can find the long side by just doubling it. So we're going to double x. We're going to double 7 root 3 over 3. So 2 times 7 is 14 root 3 over 3. Last problem. We have x and y, and we have that the hypotenuse is square root of 8. So if we want to find the short leg, how is the hypotenuse related to the short leg? Well, the hypotenuse is double the short leg, or you can see it as the short leg is half of the hypotenuse. Therefore, the short leg is going to be half of square root of 8, half of the hypotenuse. And the way you do that is square root of 8 divided by 2. That's it. There's no square root in the denominator, so we don't have to do anything with it. Now we want to find y. Y is the long leg, and remember that the long leg is the short leg times square root of 3, right? The long leg is equal to the short leg times square root of 3, and we already know what x is. X is square root of 8 over 2. So we're going to substitute that. Square root of 8 over 2 times square root of 3. When you have square root of 8 times square root of 3, that gives you square root of 24 all over 2. And then you can break down the 24 into a perfect square. 4 is a perfect square times 6, and we know the square root of 4 is 2. And then we have the square root of 6 left over. 2 divided by 2 cancels out, and we're just left with the square root of 6. Thank you. Have a good one.